What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So just in case you missed it, after 200 episodes of the Spawncast, Evan created this really cool looking design for different shirts and hoodies, and even one that's like an all over print. It's really cool looking, but the lineup is all done and they are on sale. You can check them out down below in the description and below this video here. Today, though, we have several things to go over, which includes an interesting but maybe expected turn around the Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword controversy, mostly about the sales of the game already. Also, we're going to be talking about the new Diablo 2 remaster announcement. I'm really excited for it because we also had some unexpected announcements for console versions, and it looks like one of the most interesting Nintendo 64 games that never came out technically got leaked online, and we'll go over that. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton, and if you're newer to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with a special edition that is only coming out in Japan, and it's kind of a shame because this seems to happen quite a bit where you'll see a game pop up in the Direct and it's really cool, or it'll just get announced on Twitter, and then you'll find out that there is a physical edition or a really nice looking collector's edition that only exists in like Japan or Australia or just any region other than yours. Well, check this out here. This was posted up and announced. It looks like Legend of Mana Remaster will have a physical release in Japan with collector's edition. You can see it there. It's pretty cool. Now, I don't really have any like nostalgic ties to Legend of Mana. I really didn't get into it, but I am interested in checking it out when it releases on the Switch here. But it just reminds me that pretty consistently we'll have these different announcements, and it's like I can't get the physical copy because it's not in my region. I'm curious if this will have an English version of it or like an English option in the game. Most likely it won't, and I'll just have to cross my fingers and hope that it'll eventually release in the US physically. Also, while BlizzCon was full of all kinds of different announcements, like we had some Diablo 4 news, Overwatch 2 stuff, obviously the Diablo 2 remaster, it does look like we're also getting some sort of arcade collection. It's very interesting to see this, by the way, certainly out of left field, but check this one out here. This is the Blizzard Arcade Collection. It'll have Blackthorn, The Lost Vikings, Rock and Roll Racing, so those 3 games. Then they'll also have kind of like this nice behind the scenes museum where you'll have different art and artifacts unlock, a music player, you'll be able to see behind the scenes interviews. And you know, again, I don't really have any ties to a lot of these games here, like through nostalgia. I know I played Lost Vikings on the Super Nintendo back in the day, but it's odd that they didn't also grab Lost Vikings 2, unless there's some licensing issue there. I don't know, but like Lost Vikings 1 is kind of rare. I do know Blackthorn is rare. Rock Roll Racing's like mid tier on that, but certainly Lost Vikings 2 would have been awesome to throw in there. Looking at this, I probably Lost Vikings is a game I would play here. It's $20 though for the collection, which isn't too bad, and it's out on all platforms. Also, here's a headline that only really seems to make sense now in a post-cyberpunk world. Check this out here. This from Game Pressure saying Take-Two CEO says AAA games should be polished before release. This from Strauss Zelnick saying, I think the case that you're alluding to reflects the fact that you're always better served to wait for perfection. If you can create perfection, and all of our labels are seeking perfection, and we don't always succeed, sometimes we'll fall short, but that's the goal. Now, this talking with investors seemingly around, hey, where's Grand Theft Auto 6? And yes, the one thing here with Strauss Zelnick when he's talking to investors, he also has the benefit of saying, yeah, we just sold 20 million GTA 5s, and GTA Online makes us an obscene amount of money, so we're not really in a rush. Like, there are a lot of times where you'll have pressure from investors because you have to deliver, you know, so much money and revenue and year-over-year growth. And I'm sure that's something that CD Projekt felt, right, when they were trying to decide, okay, when is Cyberpunk coming out? They don't have a GTA 5 that's just making 20 million copies in a year for some reason, despite it coming out in 2013. That's how many they just sold this past year. CD Projekt didn't have that, so you kind of get that pressure, whereas Strauss Zelnick sitting back is like, you know, when it's really, really good is when we'll release it. So, you know, someday. And you guys, some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. It's coming out in July alongside of those really cool looking Joy-Cons, and immediately, as soon as it was announced, naturally, it had some controversy around it because it is technically the lowest rated 3D Zelda game, but that's a 93. So it's still obviously a good game. But then we see the pricing, and the $60 pricing has not gone over well online. So much so, you would assume that the sales would be pretty bad for this game, but as I said, it's most likely going to, at the minimum, double the near 4 million copies that it sold originally when it released on the Wii. Well, it looks like so far, it probably will do that, because if we go over to Amazon, we can see it is the top selling game right now in bestsellers for video games, this being the pre-order through Amazon. The game's not out until July, and it's already at the top when it comes to box games. Now, of course, if you look at like the top 6 or top 5, depending on where it's been bouncing around between a Roblox gift card of $10 and a $10 card for the PlayStation Store. But it is the top when it comes to games, because if you look through, number 1 is a PlayStation Store card, number 2 is an Xbox gift card, then you have an eShop card, and so on. But outside of that, you get the Skyward Sword, and then behind that is Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, and then you have a Pro Controller, and then the Switch itself, and so on. And then after that, you have to go all the way down to like number 16, where you see a pair of Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe and Mario Kart 8. That's interesting. This kind of reminds me of what happened with Pokemon when Sword and Shield were coming out, and there was a lot of pushback because people were seeing it as not a high quality game. And remember, there was the whole boycott and all this, and then here's Pokemon selling like 20 million copies or something. So from what I can tell, a lot of times when there's some sort of boycott or big pushback on a game, generally I think, okay, well, I guess we'll see what kind of sales this game will get, because a lot of times you just then get the word out about a game, specifically like Skyward Sword, that not a lot of people played, which is weird to think, because the Wii was a very successful system for Nintendo. It just, for their core franchises like The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, didn't have a great attach rate, not even able to sell 4 million copies on a user base of over 100 million. And this obviously shows that compared to the overall mainstream who's playing games, a lot of us online, whether it's talking about video games or watching YouTube or any of that, are mostly the vocal minority, especially on like Twitter even, right? So yes, it does look like Skyward Sword is off and running very quickly right now when it comes to sales. And hey, the one good thing about all of this is Nintendo's very transparent about their sales data. So as we go through the year beyond July, I'm sure we'll see just how many people bought Skyward Sword. Oh, and also the Legend of Zelda franchise turned 35 yesterday on Sunday, so big congratulations there to a franchise that has stood the test of time. Let me know which Zelda game is your favorite down in the comments. Mine is still A Link to the Past, and if you have not tried it out, you really should. It's on the Nintendo Switch Online service now. Next up, let's talk about what was probably one of the most exciting announcements at BlizzCon over the weekend, and that is that Diablo 2 is indeed coming back under the name Diablo 2 Resurrected. There is a full trailer online. So many people were hyped up over this, and yeah, I get it. Diablo 2 back in the day was such a good game. There's so many memories I had coming back to me as this trailer was playing, because they showed like the older graphics and you could switch over to the newer ones. Apparently you could do that like on the fly, but wow, a ton of hours poured into this game back in the day. But we can see some of the trailer here along with their website that they put up with some of the features listed. And interestingly enough, yes, it's also coming to consoles this year alongside of PC, and the Nintendo Switch is included. That one caught a lot of people off guard as well. But some of the features here include remastered graphics for monsters, heroes, items, spells, all resurrected, classic gameplay, the same Diablo 2 you know and love, preserved, planned support for cross-progression, so you can take your progress wherever you play. This is big for the Nintendo Switch, because obviously out of all of the platforms listed, that's the one that would be portable and you would take with you on the go. So even if you have like a really nice PC, but then you also have your Switch and you're gonna be going out for a while or on a trip or something, you could technically then transfer your character, your save over to your Switch, play it while you're on the go, and then when you get back, you can then load it back onto your really nice PC. Speaking of which, they do mention that it will be 4K 2160p resolution on PC, and I would expect that same kind of support for the Xbox Series X, S, and PlayStation 5. But yes, very, very exciting stuff here, and it's all happening apparently in 2021 across the board. Makes sense why they pulled Vicarious Visions in here, because the fact that they're going to be targeting all of these different platforms all at the same time, I thought they would have announced it for PC and then maybe the following year come to consoles, because we're used to that with really with even like the Switch. You'll see it come out for like the PlayStation, the Xbox, and the PC, and then the Switch version will come later. But even more so with something like this from Blizzard, they would target the PC first and then eventually find its way to consoles. No, all across the board. So exciting stuff there. Love the idea of cross progression, by the way, and very, very excited to get back to Diablo 2 later on this year. Next up, let's talk about what was a canceled Nintendo 64 game that was then turned into a Star Fox game. Kind of. It was a really weird situation with this one, and if you played Star Fox Adventures back in the day, you may have noticed, like I did, this doesn't feel like Star Fox 64 because it really wasn't a Star Fox game originally. It was Dinosaur Planet, and that game has now leaked out online. You can go download it and play it on an emulator, although it's a little weird apparently on an emulator, but if you have a flash cart like an EverDrive, you can play it on real hardware on your Nintendo 64. Check this out. This is the tweet that everyone was going crazy over from Forest of Illusion. Today, we have released Dinosaur Planet by Rare for Nintendo 64. The development is halted and moved to GameCube, where it was then released as Star Fox Adventures. Enjoy, with a link there to go download it. And they go on further to say, note the game will currently not run 100% perfectly on any emulator. Expect many graphical issues with shadows and lighting and some slowdown. It should, however, work perfectly fine with flash carts. They then show off the disc that they were able to purchase to then get this game from, and they go on a bit further to mention that this build of the game was like kind of later on, so that's why you see like Fox actually as part of this and changing out the main character, and it was an odd story at the time. Apparently Rare was creating this game, Miyamoto noticed that it was very similar looking to Star Fox, so they took Fox and put him in the game, and then they moved it over to GameCube and came out as Star Fox Adventures, but originally it was Dinosaur Planet, and now we can play it on the Nintendo 64. And that's actually what I'm going to do. You can check also, if you want to check out some gameplay right now, John Linneman over at Eurogamer put up like a 20 or 30 minute video of him kind of going through it from what I can tell on real hardware. So that's certainly one you want to check out, and you see some of the footage here of it. So go check that video out to see a bit more about this game. But I'm excited to see it. Apparently there needs to be some modding done to make the game 100% playable because it's still not like the complete finished build of the game. But still, to go back and see what could have been, and I mean, really, most people would not have bought it if it just came out as Dinosaur Planet. It needed something a little extra, and I would say the Star Fox treatment at least helped it. But that also brings up the question around Star Fox now, because back then, this was a massive departure for what we knew Star Fox to be with the N64 and just Star Fox 64 there. I kind of feel like we need something like this again for Star Fox. I don't know if we need like Star Fox Adventures 2, but something different for the franchise, just to kind of, I don't know, take it in a different direction, maybe modernize it a little bit more for the current times, because Star Fox has been having a hard time recently, and I would like to see another game, and I feel like even Nintendo's thinking, we gotta do something big here to make Star Fox relevant if they ever do it again. So here's hoping they figure something out. In our last bit of news, let's talk about Microsoft, because Microsoft's been pretty quiet so far this year, haven't they? They haven't really talked about many games coming up. We know Halo Infinite's coming out at the end of this year. We hope Halo Infinite's coming out at the end of this year. Flight Simulator is coming to Xbox, and we just had the Medium, I guess, but for the most part, we don't really hear about Microsoft trying to set up 2021 with a bunch of releases, but I was assuming, I'm sure as many of you, that they were working to get that Bethesda deal done before they tell us about their plans with some of these Bethesda releases that are coming up, like something with Starfield. Well, it looks like Jeff Grubb did comment a bit on this over at GamesBeat, and this is what he had to say. Once the deal closes, they will talk about it in a big way. I don't know if it will be a full direct style event, but they will make note of it, and they will talk about it extensively, and they will explain what it means to everybody, kind of talk about the immediate future for both companies, becoming one in the future. So there have been talks that Microsoft may do some renaming of different branches of Bethesda, or just Bethesda in general. It's really hard to say how far they'll go with any of that, but I would like to think that after this deal goes through, they'll be much more comfortable answering the question of, hey, is Starfield just going to be on Xbox and PC or Game Pass? Will this be on the PS5? Is Deathloop now just a timed exclusive for the PS5 and eventually go to the Xbox? And those are the questions that are getting thrown at them right now, and I kind of feel like Starfield is coming out this year, believe it or not. They need to get this Bethesda deal done, and the original word was they have plans to finish it up until June at the latest, so they may actually have that pushed forward and try to get it done, as Jeff Grubb was mentioning here, next month. And then we can finally be like, okay, what's Microsoft going to do in 2021? Because right now we're really talking about like Sony, and okay, now Nintendo's doing a bunch of stuff, but Microsoft is like, well, we got Flight Simulator, and Hopefully Halo. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're gonna check out the poll that I posted up on Friday, asking something that I think was very relevant at the time because there was a lot of talk around Skyward Sword. I asked, have you ever played Zelda Skyward Sword? Out of 68,000 votes, 67% said no, the Switch port would be the first time. So we've talked about how a lot of people are buying these Wii U ports because they didn't have a Wii U, so they didn't play it. Well, now, I mean, if you think about this, what Skyward Sword came out in 2011 when a lot of people had moved on from the Wii, there might even be less people who have played Skyward Sword who now have a Switch than some of these Wii U ports. So yes, now after Breath of the Wild's come out, Zelda is really popular. I mean, Breath of the Wild has sold an incredible amount of copies compared to what The Legend of Zelda would normally sell. And you see like that little stamina meter, and like they mentioned Breath of the Wild in the introduction for it. There are going to be a lot of people interested in this game because they've never even seen it before. I know, it sounds weird, right? They may have never seen Skyward Sword before. This is probably a new game to a lot of people who have the Switch right now, and I think we're gonna see that reflected in the sales. And we'll finish up with a comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from Dazin saying, I like how he says a big announcement like Metroid. Splatoon is bigger than Metroid at this point. Both games have sold more than any Metroid game, and they've almost outsold the entire Metroid franchise in less than 6 years. So the reason I think Metroid would be a big announcement is because there's a lot of uncertainty around it, a lot of concern, a lot of fear that it's not going to happen after, them basically rebooting everything, so it sounds like something was really wrong. Splatoon is expected almost like, all right, look, I know Splatoon 3, that is pretty soon for it, but like, no one's like, oh no, I wonder if there will be a Splatoon 3. Obviously there will be. Nintendo treats that as one of their like premier IPs now, but like Metroid has always been the one that Nintendo's been like, it's Metroid, so there's concern around Prime 4 and if it's gonna come out, it's gonna be good and get the attention that it needs. That's why that would be a bigger announcement to me. But I mean, I guess if we're going by sales, maybe Splatoon 3 will eventually be able to pass Super Mario Party, which has not had an update, by the way. So I don't know, maybe Splatoon 3 can do it. Or maybe not, Nintendo just still won't update Mario Party. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button, it really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today, with The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, and it jumping to like the top of the Amazon sales charts just with pre-orders alone. Are you surprised, or did you think maybe some people would hold out a bit more on buying the $60 Wii port? And then also Diablo 2 Resurrected, very excited for this one. Awesome to see it going to all platforms with cross progression. Then Dinosaur Planet, are you downloading to try it out because you remember Star Fox Adventures from back in the GameCube days? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.